Hi out there, it's me, Breanna. In this video, I'll be reviewing Deathbound. Deathbound is a Souls-like RPG from the talented developers at Trialforge Studio and publisher Tate Multimedia. Before we dive into today's review, I just wanted to give a heartfelt thank you to both the developers and the publisher for providing the code for this review. All right, let's get started. Let's kick off this review by chatting a bit about the story and world building. Our story starts with the first men, a race of beings that lived for thousands of years. Eventually, the first men gave up their immortality, and as a result, their society collapsed overnight. From the ashes of this old world, humanity has risen once again. It is amongst these ashes that we find Zymanol, the setting of Deathbound. The Church of Death is a political organization that follows Goddess Death. They live by her teachings and go willingly into her embrace when it is their time. The Cult of Life is an alliance of many organizations resisting the oppression of the Church of Death. Among this group are the Essence Mancers, worshippers of the Goddess of Life who are on a quest to return immortality to mankind. These two groups are constantly in conflict with each other, trying to determine whether life should be eternal. This overall story concept, as well as the world itself, is one of my favorite parts of the game. It's easy to understand the motivations of both sides of this conflict, and I found myself aligning with either side as the story progressed. Another huge win for me with the world building was the environments. It was so interesting to go through this medieval society that is built into a high-tech environment. It's as if our distant past is meeting our far-off future. There are horse-drawn carriages and knights next to glowing buildings and technology that seems to surpass even our modern-day technology. I find the world incredibly interesting and found myself easily immersed in the world and story. With all that being said, I have to mention how astonishingly cheesy the dialogue of this game is.
I have no sad story to tell. Wasn't beaten by my papa.
While I really do love the story and the world, I couldn't stand listening to the character introductions. Their backstories were heavy-handed and over the top to the point that it was painful. The surprising thing is that when the characters talk to each other, the dialogue is actually fairly engaging. It was honestly just the backstories that were a problem for me, which is a perfect transition to talking about the characters. In Deathbound, you play as 7 different characters, or essences, who are connected in a state between life and death due to an experiment by the Essence Mancers to achieve eternal life. One of the best parts of this game is the conflict between these bound characters. Many of them knew each other and were enemies in life. Can you imagine being stuck for who knows how long with the person who murdered your family, all in the same body? The developers took a bold step by making some of the playable characters not just enemies to each other, but actual villains.
Hey, guys, let me kill him.
You what now?
I want to know what it feels like.
This adds a unique twist to the gameplay, allowing you to explore morally ambiguous roles, which is a refreshing change from the usual hero archetype. Next, let's dive into the actual gameplay and mechanics. There are so many things I absolutely adore about this game's mechanics. Some of my favorite features include the ability to shift between essences, which offers a wide range of abilities and builds to choose from, the fact that your health and stamina are tied together, an intriguing and unique twist on a Souls-like game that really makes you pay attention to your health, plus a unique healing mechanic. Your health potion works by healing your equipped essence by pulling health from the other essences. But since you heal with your equipped essence's attacks, this health can easily be recovered. While there are so many incredible and innovative pieces to the gameplay, there are also some elements that made the game feel a bit too rough for me. For one, the dodge mechanic could really use some improvement. It feels inconsistent, and paired with the fact that almost all of the enemies and bosses have combo attacks that move faster and longer than your dodge, I found the dodge mechanic to be ultimately unhelpful in a lot of fights. Another disappointing piece for me was the morph attack and morph dodge. While these mechanics are a very interesting way to utilize the character swap, I found it extremely difficult to use them consistently. When I finally did activate it, particularly for the morph attack, it was a bizarre experience. Essentially, the character moves in slow motion as they unleash their attack, while the enemy continues at what seems to be a normal speed, so most of my morph attacks missed completely. All this aside, there's one mechanic I absolutely have to talk about. At a certain point in the game, one of the bosses you've previously defeated returns to follow you around a very enclosed space. There are story reasons for why they come back, but I won't spoil it. This mechanic is very similar to how Mr. X follows you in Resident Evil 2. Now, while I'm not a fan of this mechanic in any form, this one feels especially unfair because, one, it's a Souls-like game, which is a genre that is already challenging enough. Two, there is no room to escape this character. I mean it, there is no room. And three, the character literally followed me while I was trying to activate and listen to memories. It was almost comical trying to dodge around this character in tiny rooms while trying to focus on the story. Last but not least for mechanics, I want to give a big shout out to the devs for fixing the ladder speed. They promised me they would fix it, and they absolutely pulled through. The last thing I want to chat about for this review is the bosses. Overall, I really didn't enjoy the boss fights. It felt like the bosses had unlimited stamina, with attacks happening again faster than the dodge mechanics cooldown time. One of my favorite aspects of Souls-like boss fights is the feeling of leveling up by simply understanding the boss's mechanics and learning when to dodge, but this game never gave me the chance to enjoy that process. The most frustrating of all the bosses was definitely Lilith. This boss was incredibly tough, with a 5-hit combo that I could never fully dodge while staying within melee range. On top of that, there's an ad that's identical to the boss that you have to defeat before you can realistically even start fighting the boss, which was super frustrating. I ended up having to cheese this boss by using ranged characters to sprint around and shoot her from a distance. And to sum up all of my frustration with the bosses, my playthrough came to an abrupt end when I actually rage quit for the first time in I can't even remember how long after facing the boss, Ithelos. Lastly, I wanted to share that I encountered 3, quote, fatal errors, end quote, essentially an error box that popped up stating fatal error while playing this game, which forced me to quit and restart the game. All 3 of these happened during boss fights. I also noticed that sometimes after dying during a boss fight, my character would not respawn at full health. So if you do play this game and are boss running, please keep an eye out for that bug so you don't end up in a boss room with characters that are basically already half dead. Overall, I would say that I have mixed feelings about this game. I feel like it had the potential to be a truly great game, but was held back by a few areas that needed some serious polishing, like some rough mechanics, performance issues, and an art style that honestly feels a bit outdated and not in a charming way. You can really sense the passion of the developers in every aspect of this game, but at the end of the day, it seems like it really could have benefited from a bit more development time. If you are at all interested in this game, my recommendation would be to wait until it goes on sale. And that wraps up my review. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this review. If you do end up playing this game, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. I hope you have a lovely day.
I am Theron of House Guillaumin, and I shall be known as Crusader of Death.